A big jump in the scale of beekeeping is really going from buckets to barrels,
It
and
is huge.
that requires infrastructure to be able to handle 600 plus pound barrels, and you need pumps.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of experience with honey pumps, and I don't have any.
Yeah.
So I would like to talk about some of the pros and cons of honey pumps and what
Okay.
each is good for.
Well, I'm not experienced with all the pumps out there. We have, and I can show you some of them. We've got a lobe pump that drives our automated bottling line, and it works brilliantly, but it was expensive. As we walk around this building, you're going to see serious dollar signs everywhere. The lobe pump that drives our automated bottling line was nearly $6,000 for one pump.
And the reason there's a lobe pump in that application is because it does not agitate the honey or add air to it. Correct?
Yes, but there's also another side of that story. You don't want to be putting, you don't want to use a lobe pump necessarily coming out of your extractor. Nails and splinters and bulk particles of wax and things like that are really best dealt with they call it a progressive cavity pump. It's like a screw going through a cylinder, and we've got two of those in the building. One's a 3-horse and one's a 5-horse. The 5-horse is what we use it's about a 3-foot cylinder. It's a big old progressive cavity pump. And we use that when we blend honey. Our warming room, which you'll see, holds 31 drums. And we can pump that room dry in about 2 hours with that pump. And it just clicks along. We've had it for 8 years, and all we've ever done is grease it. It's been extremely reliable. And so is the other one. The 3-horse is what we use behind the on-capper and the extracting.
So if you don't have just a clean product, if you've got a slurry of wax and honey and pieces of frame and
progressive cavity is really the best way to go. Now in my last facility I did not have that. I had gear pumps, and they work okay until you hit a frame nail and it comes to a screeching halt and your belt's smoking over there in the corner, and you got to take the pump apart and clean it out. And so gear pumps have their place, but boy, if you're handling a lot of debris in your honey, gear pumps is not the way to go. We have, and you'll see, we have several gear pumps in the building, but they're pumping relatively clean honey. One big lobe pump, 2 gear pumps, 2 progressive cavity pumps, and then a gear pump. Yeah, we have that's our pump line. We have one more gear pump out at the honey dryer there.
So what's the best application for a gear pump? Because those are the most common ones that you see.
Relatively clean honey that you won't find splinters or frame nails in. It'll pump a little bit of wax, but even large amounts of wax will clog that thing up too. If you've got big chunks of wax going through, a gear pump doesn't like that either. And a gear pump actually needs a little warmer honey than a progressive. Progressive cavity pump is just unforgiving. It will pump anything, and if you have a restriction, it'll break your pipe. I blew a pipe up once, and that's not something you want to have happen. It's interesting, when I blew that pipe up, every square inch of the room had honey on it. It didn't just make a puddle on the floor. It was like a scatter bomb going off, and it's ceiling, floors, walls, windows, doors, everything had honey on it. And those pumps are very strong, so you have to. I've often wondered if I needed a relief valve somewhere in case that ever happened again. And I'll tell you, it's kind of a dark secret, but we forgot to open a valve is what we did. You'll see in the processing room there's several valves. Everywhere there's a tank, there's a valve, and whichever valve is open, that's where the honey goes. Well, we were pumping honey once with no valves open, and I kept hearing I kept hearing a squeaking sound. I thought, what is that squeak? And I didn't realize by the time all the rubber hoses were starting to balloon up, and that was what was squeaking. And before I could get to a valve or get to a switch, it just went kaboom, and they went everywhere, all over me, all over everything. So there's probably some way we should put some sort of safety feature on that. But once that happens, you really don't forget it. You don't do it again. Yeah.
There are a lot of pumps that you can get from overseas. and that apparently they are set up or can be set up for a different hertz than what is found in the U.S.
Yeah.
So they can be a different voltage, 240 versus 120, and a different hertz. I am not an electrician. I don't understand all that. Do you have any buyer beware experience or words of advice regarding that?
Not a lot. I don't have experience. I'm aware of what you just described. All of our pumps have come with 240, 110, or three-phase, and we do not have three-phase in this building, which if you can tap into three-phase, that can be helpful. Our big 5-horse progressive cavity pump is three-phase, and we just got a transformer that you can deal with that.
Yeah.
In fact, some three-phase pumps come with that as part of the package. Actually, I think both of our progressive cavities, yeah, they both are three-phase, and we have a little transformer box there that converts it over to 240. So that's not a problem. But I'm not really up on what you have to do with imported, different voltage, different
Are your
hertz.
pumps American made?
I believe let me think about this. Yeah, they are. Now, the motor might have been manufactured in China or something, but they're all American brands. Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to put you on the spot about a Buy American or anything like that.
I'm not afraid to answer that one. I am 100% about buying American anytime I can, and I'm happy to spend a little extra money to do it.
Yeah.
So,
it seems like that would solve that problem because the product's going to be set up for our infrastructure here.
Yeah.
While we're on pumps, syrup pumps. I've watched your videos on
mixing syrup.
Yeah, mixing syrup, but also some of the smaller syrup systems that even you had one, Seth had one as well. And so diaphragm pumps, trash pumps, what you're using now, what makes sense for different scales?
Well, the reason we have a trash pump on the syrup mixing tank is it will accept clumps of sugar. As far as volume that it puts out, if you were to compare it to like a diaphragm pump, it probably doesn't put out the same volume, but that's the reason we use it, is because it'll accept solids or clumps. I think the best pump, the all-around best pump for pumping syrup, like on a truck if you're feeding bees, is probably a gear pump, as long as you don't have any garbage going in with your syrup. The pump, like on his video, a diaphragm pump, it doesn't take trash very well. Wads of dead bees will clog that thing up in a heartbeat. Of course, whereas a gear pump will grind dead bees, it won't take a nail or a splinter well, but it'll grind dead bees and pieces of wax. So for feeding bees, gear pumps, mixing sugar, trash pump, gear pumps for moving honey. I think that's really your best choice for moving honey that's not real cold, is a gear. Well, a gear pump will move cold honey. You just have to gear the motor better. A gear pump is extremely strong. If you gear it, it'll break a pipe too. It'll break a pipe in a heartbeat. They have very close tolerances, so if you gear it down enough, it would pump just about anything.
So I'm learning that there are different specs and ratings on, even within gear pumps. There are pumps that you can stick a pipe down in a barrel and it will pump out of that. And then there are some others that, like if you're filling honey bottles, it really wants the source to be as high as the filling station.
And there's a term for that. They call it flooded. At least that's what I've, several times when I've been talking to guys. Well, when I bought the automated line, the first question he asked me, he said, is this system going to be flooded? And I said, I didn't know what he's talking about. I mean, you can imagine where my mind went. Flooded? What are you talking about? And he explained that as long as the product is above the pump, it's considered flooded because the product's flowing into it potentially. And if you're not flooded, a gear pump is your best choice. If you're flooded, that low pump that you're going to see out there works great. A low pump might work okay if you're not flooded, but my limited experience is that a gear pump is the best choice if you're not flooded.
Cold honey versus warm honey.
Well,
70-degree honey versus 90-degree honey.
You need to gear your pump down, slow it down, And also in my earliest years when I was using 1-inch gear pumps, I started off with half-horse motors, and it didn't take long for me to figure out that you're better off with a 3/4 horse motor on a 1-inch gear pump because, you know, you won't burn it up when the honey's cold or whatever. My first pump came from Walter T. Kelly when it was called Walter T. Kelly Company, 1-inch gear pump. They recommended a 1/2-inch motor, so that's what I bought, and eventually I put a 3/4 on it. Nothing wrong with extra power as long as you know what's happening at the other end.
As long as the valve's not closed.
As long as the valve's not closed or the pipe's big enough. Restrictions, you don't.
Yeah.
There's no point in putting out more, pumping capacity if you have small pipes or something like that.
Okay.
I'm all about bigger pipes. You'll see 2-inch pipes running all over the place in this place. Yeah. Okay, this is one of our 1-inch gear pumps. I've had this gear pump. I've had this portion of it a long time. It's on its 3rd motor. And my earlier advice about, go bigger instead of smaller is true in this case. I think that's a 1-horse motor. I know it's at least a 3/4. This pump started off with a 1/2-horse motor, and I burnt that out the first year. Went up to the 3/4. This is a new motor. I don't think we burned the 3/4 out. I think we actually wore it out. These pumps, if they're treated right, will last a very, very long time. This is a Sherwood brand. There's several really good brands out there. And then the first thing you want to do as soon as you come out of the pump is to expand your pipe. You can see we went right up into 2-inch right away. The less back pressure you have, the better, and the less elbows. The elbows and changes in direction, that all creates more back pressure. Of course, here we had to elbow out of there, but this one came straight out. And when you look around our place, everywhere you look, we got big 2-inch and 3-inch pipes, so everything has as little restriction as possible.
Food grade hoses, fittings, and
yeah.
all the adapters to make a system work together. Where do you get that stuff from?
Oh, we'd have to ask Dave. And remind me when we get out of here. Dave has some sites that he gets all of our stainless steel fittings from that are much cheaper than Amazon or anywhere else. Okay, so where are we getting all the stainless steel fittings and stuff?
We bought them all over the place and paid exuberant prices for them until I finally researched and found a place called pipingnow.com, and you can actually buy stainless fittings cheaper than brass locally, which is quite a savings. And their shipping is good. It's not missed a beat, so I've really been impressed with them.
We're getting our valves there too?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yep.
And when we just need 1 or 2 items, quite often we'll go to Granger's or McMaster Car. Are you familiar with those 2
Yes.
industrial supplies? They have anything you'd want. They just tend to be more expensive. And PVC is legit in honey production. It's a food grade plastic piping, and we utilize it a lot. I don't like honey to sit in plastic. If it's just passing through, I'm okay with that. But I would not choose to have a holding tank or anything that was plastic where honey would spend some time sitting there. Because of the acidity of plastic, it really can, because of the acidity of honey, which is an average of 3.9, it can really pick up that plastic, even food grade plastic. It can, I use the word etch, I don't know if that's a good word, but it can etch that plastic and pull molecules or whatever out of the plastic.